Good evening. Welcome to MH Warrior TV. My name's Adam Duval, mental health warrior, and I know this came as a bit of a surprise because this wasn't scheduled, but it was scheduled, just never put it on TV Guide. My fault. But anyway, we are bringing on Simon McDougall, and we're going to have a little bit of a panel discussion with, I'm going to brand him Superman with what he has to come out with. So, hello, Simon.
Good evening, Adam.
How are we?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. I'm looking forward to interviewing and joining discussion with Superman, as you dubbed him. I think it's a very appropriate name.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, also got absolute fascinating biography, and I look forward to this.
Absolutely. And all we can say is to people, I best put the banner on before I get shouted at. All we can say is for people who are going to view this, subscribe to our channel, follow us on Facebook, and we'll see you in about 30 seconds. Dr. Kevin, welcome.
Hello, gentlemen. Glad to be here.
You are most welcome.
Good evening.
Yeah, right. Do you accept the one Superman as the nickname?
All I was thinking during that introduction is you guys have really oversold me, and I really don't know how I can live up to that intro, but I'll give it a shot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think from time to time overselling's pretty good. What do you think, Simon?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I think I certainly think your biography fits the bill, I have to say.
Yeah,
well, you guys are very kind.
Absolutely. And for people that actually don't even know what we're talking about, Dr. Kevin J. Payne is a social psychologist, entrepreneur, author, and a skydiver. And he's doing it all with MS. So I've got to congratulate you, Kevin. I really do for what you're doing. Yeah.
I didn't really have much choice in the matter. It's what life gave me, so I'm trying to do the best with it that I can.
Absolutely. So I'm not going to carry on reading the bio because I don't want to give too much away, but I want to just dive right into it and basically talk about like you growing up before you actually became this skydiver. So, who is Dr. Kevin?
Well, I was a geeky little kid. I was a child of the Apollo era, so I was always fascinated with everything up in the sky, and so when I was a little kid at an air show, I saw a skydiver, and when he came out, his canopy opened and it was square. It was a rectangular parachute, what we call a ram air parachute, and those were new at the time. They'd been invented in the 60s and they were new in the 70s, and you can control them like a fixed wing glider. So instead of just dropping out of the sky, he flew around and did corkscrews and all kinds of neat maneuvers, whizzed over us, landed on target. And I thought to myself, I want to do that. So I started making my own parachutes and climbing as high as I thought I could. And I bent myself a few times, but I didn't break myself completely. So I also realized that my halfway efforts at home weren't going to work, so I needed some training. So flash forward to the 90s, and I'm a young man now in graduate school. I'm working on my doctorate, and I decide I've waited too long, and I find a drop zone, which is where you jump out of planes. It's called a drop zone, and started the training and got a few jumps in, but I quickly learned that skydiving isn't just a hobby, it's really a lifestyle choice. And it requires a lot of time and effort to learn how to do it, because you have to learn how to fly yourself in two ways. You've got to fly your body in space, but then you also have to learn how to fly the canopy. And there's just a lot to it. So that kind of had to go by the wayside, and then, you know, career and kids and eventually health got in the way.
Yeah.
And as my MS got worse, I came to the point in my life where I thought, you know, I'd given up a lot of different things in my life, and I eventually came to the point where I thought I'm never going to be able to get back to skydiving. So
Damn.
that's the backstory.
Yeah. Obviously, for people that don't know, I actually watched the film called Pearl Harbor. Now, obviously, this ain't related to nothing, but I'm just visioning now you, Kevin, being that little child obsessed with the air. Was you like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was obsessed with science. I was obsessed with performing, and I was obsessed with the sky. And so, you know, as a kid, I did all the geeky stuff. I got into computers and science, and I was hacking onto the old ARPANET before it was the internet. And I grew up performing. I got my trombone behind me there, and so I grew up being musical and being in the theater, and I love being in the air.
So would it be fair to say that you're an adrenaline junkie?
Some people would say that, and there's maybe something to that. I would say maybe I have a poor capability to accurately calibrate risk. Because most people who are, if you don't skydive, you tend to think that skydivers are adrenaline junkies with a death wish. And those are the people that don't stay in the sport. You know, they'll come in, they'll try it for a little while, and then they don't stay. The people who stay in the sport are the ones that realize on the other, while you're in the plane, you're on one side of the fear, and the fear is in the plane. But when you exit that door, there is pure joy on the other side. And it is an absolutely mindful, focused, in this moment, no distractions kind of experience. And your senses, once you get used to it, your senses expand and your reflexes speed up, your sense of time slows down. And even though we're only in free fall for a minute or so at a time, give or take, it seems like 4 or 5 minutes. And you're interacting with your friends, you're doing formations, you're free flying, you're tracking, you're doing all these different things in the air. And it is, in a world that we live in, which is so distracted all the time, we've got all these nattering distractions in us all the time. This is a moment when we are absolutely focused and fully living and fully experiencing what life is in front of us. And so the people who stay in skydiving and log hundreds and thousands of jumps and do it year after year, those are the people who find that kind of joy.
That's interesting, because you just got a question that's come up there from, I think it's Elizabeth Jean.
Yeah.
Olivia
Gagnon.
Gagnon, and yeah, she's just saying, what is the thrill of skydiving? And I think you've probably just summed that up in a nutshell.
Yeah, it is a wonderful kind of accomplishment. You know, there's in Stoic philosophy, there's this idea of the memento mori, and in the Middle Ages and in the Renaissance, they would have these reminders of death. And one of the most common ones that we know of nowadays is a pirate flag, right? A
Yeah,
Jolly Roger, where you've got the skull and crossbones. And that wasn't about terrifying only. It was about being a memento mori. And the idea is when we acknowledge death, that death is a part of our frail human experience, that is the ultimate motivation to choose life. And I look at every skydive as a living memento mori. When I exit the plane at 14,000 feet, which is where we usually go out, a little voice in the back of my head says 82 seconds. Because at that point, my life expectancy is 82 seconds unless I do something really right. And then there comes a point in every skydive, because the point of a skydive is to be able to live and do another skydive. You've got to do this. And that's what's on the cover of my book. And I'm at 5,000 feet when that picture is taken, and I'm doing this. And this is called the wave off. And this is where I'm saying to everybody in my airspace, I'm warning you, I'm about to take action to save myself. And then I deploy my parachute. And how many times in our lives, day in and day out, are we faced with the opportunity to actively choose life?
It's a very interesting explanation there, as Elizabeth has just said. Yeah, I can get where you come from, where the buzz is, and yeah, you choose life by letting out the chute at the end. With your MS, Kevin, does it create unusual difficulties when you get to the landing phase?
Yeah, one of the it affects the landing, but it also affects free fall as well, and that was my initial problem. So MS symptoms are really widely varied, and I've got a lot of them. I always live with pain and fatigue and cognitive fogginess, and there's about 30 other symptoms on my list that kind of come and go. But one thing that's pretty persistent is for years and years and years, I can't feel my legs below my knees. So I tend to walk okay until I get tired. When I get really tired, then I have difficulty moving around and my balance goes, and it gets kind of ugly. But because I couldn't feel my legs below my knees, so normally it takes 25 jumps to get your A license in skydiving. That's your first license. And there are four different licenses that are, first at 25, the last one at 500. And even though I'd gotten in about 13 jumps and then had a long break, and then I came back in 2019 with MS to do this. And the challenge for me was learning how to control my legs in free fall, because I wasn't getting the signals about where they were in space, right? And if they're out of balance, then you start spinning around and tumbling all over the place. And it looks really scary. So after one of my early jumps, I'm still on student status. I come in and you do a debrief afterward with your instructor. And my instructor sat down in front of me, and she had, thousands of jumps, really accomplished. And she looked at me and she said, "That was the most terrifying skydive I've ever experienced. What's going on with your legs?" So then I told everybody what I was dealing with. I didn't to begin with, because I was afraid they wouldn't let me go ahead and try to do it. But I had to demonstrate that I could be altitude aware and control myself enough that I could deploy at the proper time and land myself safely. So that ended up being a lot of extra work. And then when I was landing, as you said, I can't feel when my feet touch down. So I had to learn how to feel the pressure at my knees because I can consistently feel there. So now I can, I usually stand up a landing on target, but I had to work at it, and legs were a big part of trying to figure this out.
Absolutely. Yeah, and obviously we've got a couple of questions, and I've got one myself. Now, obviously,
Sure.
I'll go with Elizabeth's, which I think is an easy answer with that one. Would you recommend someone who's afraid of heights to try this to beat their fear of heights? Now, obviously, straight away, what comes to me is to conquer a fear, you must face the fear.
Yeah, there's a concept that I develop in my book called the edge, and the edge is a ratio between what something is demanding of you and how much capacity you can deliver at that moment. So if the demand's really low, we're bored. If the demand is really high, we're traumatized because it's far more than we can deliver. And right here where they're close to one another, that's called the edge. And some of the best human experiences and the worst human experiences are right there at the edge, because if the demand's a little higher, we fail. If the capacity is a little higher, then we succeed and we feel accomplished and we feel like we've been challenged. It's what's called a flow experience, right? And we're in the zone. So when we are up that far skydiving, it is so far out of our normal frame of reference that it almost doesn't feel like you are that high, because you just can't wrap your brain around how high you are. So certainly a lot of people help overcome a fear of heights by skydiving. For me, I had become afraid of my own body because it had betrayed me in so many ways. And in learning to skydive, and so, while it normally takes 25 jumps to get that first license, it took me 47 because I had to do a lot of extra work to get this done and do time in the vertical wind tunnels and just lots of extra work. So for me, it was, I no longer trust my body. I'm going to put myself in a circumstance where I'm going to dial my stress response up to 11, and I am going to save myself. I'm going to use my body to save myself every time, or I'm going to splat on the ground. And then in 2020, I decided I'm going to set myself a real challenge and become a legitimate skydiver, serious skydiver. So I had about 140 jumps or so going into 2020. And I said, all right, I'm going to break 500 this year because I wanted to get all my licenses. I wanted to earn a coach rating so I could, help other people learn, that sort of thing. So that meant I was going to have to average better than one skydive a day for the entire year. And I logged 370 skydives in 2020.
Wow.
And that was my extreme exposure therapy in learning that I still have the capacity to save myself.
Yeah, and obviously Kerry's put, do you have a favorite time you have skydived?
Oh yeah, time. Without a doubt, almost every skydiver you will talk to will tell you it's the magic hour. So right when sunset's happening, or occasionally is sunrise, right? Because the sun's on the horizon, you've got that beautiful golden glow around you. This was shot during the magic hour, so you can see the sun behind me and that golden hue on the clouds and everything. That's why we love it. It is a beautiful, magical time to be flying through the air.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to ask, what was your response to when you first went up in the air for the very first time? Like, what adrenaline was going through you?
So the very first time I did a skydive was in the 1990s. And, I'd started doing it. Now, back then, tandem skydiving wasn't yet a common thing. So nowadays, most people will do their first skydive you get strapped onto a tandem instructor, an experienced person, and you're a passenger, on your first jump. Well, tandem skydiving was invented in the 80s, and it wasn't common till the 2000s. So back when I started, the common way to do it was a static line jump or an instructor assisted deploy jump. So in other words, I went up in a little plane with a Cessna. I did all the training, strapped on a parachute myself, went up and had to exit by myself and pilot my own canopy to the ground. So that was my first jump.
Yeah. Is it true that the first ever jump is it's either 100 feet or 1,000 feet? Is it?
No. You may be thinking about so some military jumps, if they're doing static line, will go out as low as maybe around 1,000 feet, but usually it's more like 3,000 or 4,000. Tandem jumps are usually done at a normal skydiving altitude, so somewhere between maybe 10 and 14,000 feet. We don't usually go above 15,000 feet because, well, there are two reasons. One, it's because that's commercial airspace.
Yeah.
And we stay out of that. And then the second reason is you go above 15,000 feet and you have to wear oxygen.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we got a question there, Kevin. How do we get Dr. Kevin's book? I believe you got two written down in your in the biography you sent us.
This one is out. I would give you my copy, but this is my copy. If you go to yourlifelivedwell.co, all the information is there, and you can buy it. It is on sale February 7th, and you can download a 100-page preview for free right now and decide whether it's going to be for you or not. So maybe 1/3 of it's my story kind of wrapped in between, but most of it is the science. And that's, I'm a social psychologist, and so it's about the non-medical things we can do to improve our quality of life with chronic illness. So mindset, behavior, relationships, environment, those kinds of things. And it's not about me giving you one particular path. It's about me showing you, here's how you can figure out your own path, because it's going to be different than somebody else. And it's going to be different now than it will be in 6 months or 6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. And it's, I noticed there also, you've, with what you've done there, Kevin, you've done a podcast, and you've also been doing educational things. Be very interested to hear that, and I'm sure our viewers would.
Sure. So I spent 15 years as a professor, and I left being a professor. I left the academy back in 2012 to be a tech entrepreneur, but I'm always an educator at heart. And so when I launched Your Life Lived Well, I do 24 different seminars, and they are for those of us living with chronic illness, for our loved ones and caregivers, because they often get lost in the shuffle, and for medical health and wellness professionals, because most of their training is through an acute care model. And they are trained to say, okay, identify a medical problem, give it a medical solution, apply that, and send you back to a normal life. Well, that's great for a broken bone or a case of the flu.
Yeah.
But when you have a chronic illness, this is the rest of our lives. And we need a different approach, and we need different tools. And so a lot of what I do is training those medical and health professionals to adopt a better mindset, and one that helps them balance the stresses of treating people like us better in their lives, so they're not dealing with as much burnout and that sort of thing.
I need to connect you with someone that also lives with a chronic illness. and she's called Karen Unruh. And she is absolutely amazing. Like she was part of the Warriors at one point, but obviously she had to sadly leave us because of the chronic pain she experienced. So yeah, I think I need to connect you both.
Yeah, sounds great. I love meeting pretty much almost everybody. Most people are really cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting what you're saying there, Kevin, because it's very much a mindset thing. I myself, I'm a type 2 diabetic. I've had to go on insulin too, and I've had struggles over the years with that. Again, it's a chronic illness, and it's very much a mindset thing. But as it's sort of developed, I've now got neuropathy in my legs and feet. I've got background retinopathy, which is now starting to cause concern with the eye consultants. And, you know, I think anybody that's in that situation, you've got to condition them for life. It's the old saying of mind over matter in a lot of cases is very, very true, because you can choose how you cope with a condition on what you choose to do in life. And you're a clear example of exactly what you've done. And may I say, a leading example too.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I want to emphasize here is, like, first, yes, mindset is absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
But the thing that can become disheartening about the way we talk about it is there are two things that happen. One is that when people talk about mindset, it's easy for someone who has been struggling for a long time to hear that what they're talking about is this fluffy, smarmy, positive thinking sort of garbage.
Yeah.
And that's not what we're talking about at all.
No.
That is not it at all. Because what we're going through sucks. And we can acknowledge that, but we can also say that's not going to be all of my life. There are going to be lots of other good things in there as well. And the second thing that's an issue here is that people think, oh, all I need to do is think good thoughts. And it's like, no, it's a muscle. You've got to build it, and you've got to practice it, and you've got to cope with failing at doing it along the way, because you will fail on the path to becoming more successful about it.
Yeah.
And that once you get there, that you're only going to get there and you don't have to do anything about it anymore. No, it's just like working a muscle. You've got to exercise, you've got to keep doing it, and it's got to become this practice, and this mindful operation has to become a consistent part of your life from now on.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the viewers that obviously don't have what you two have, for the viewers that experience, for example, fibro, what's the difference between what you have and fibro?
Well, fibromyalgia, of course, is another autoimmune condition.
Yeah.
You're just having part of your body being attacked. And of course, MS is an autoimmune condition. My central nervous system is being attacked. One of the things that I think is really helpful, and it was a different approach I took in this book and in my curriculum, and that is, so much education out there is diagnosis focused. It's about, here's life with X, Y, or Z condition.
Yeah.
And so much education out there is about really training you to be a good patient, quote unquote. And I want to give that the finger, right? Because
we have to.
I don't care about being a good patient. I care about living a good life. Now, what I do care about is becoming a respected partner in my own care.
Yeah.
That's what I care about. But I don't care about being someone, because I have a medical condition over 30 years now that has been mishandled by plenty of medical professionals. They're just human, and sometimes they get it right and sometimes they get it wrong.
Yeah.
And I want people to listen to this really carefully. I am the expert on the experience of living with my condition.
Yeah.
Okay? That doesn't make me a medical expert, but it makes me the valued source of information for one crucial component of dealing with my condition.
Exactly, and this is why people come to the Mental Health Warriors, because not only do we say things raw, but we're not professionals. Yeah, we've got some credentials behind us, but we're not professionals, but we're experienced. And we always say this, and we can't stress this enough, is the best person to know their mental health or chronic illness best is themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I would add also is that, we do an excellent job of lying to ourselves.
Yeah.
So we have to actually work and train ourselves to become the best observer of ourselves that we can.
Yeah.
And so, it's not that out of the box, everything I think about my condition is correct. But it is the case that I am in a unique position to observe things that are going on in my condition that nobody else can observe. And I owe it to myself and to my medical health and wellness team and to my caregivers and my loved ones around me to become the best honest observer of myself that I can. And sometimes that's really difficult because there are things with chronic illness that lead us to places that we don't want to necessarily face about ourselves. And I've certainly been there. So I have all the empathy in the world for it.
Absolutely. And obviously going back to what Elizabeth asked, what are your personally top three tools for mindset?
Well, it begins with meditation.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does. And you can have all kinds of woo-woo, hippy-dippy approaches to meditation that you want. And if that works for you, that's fine. But for the people who are skeptical about it, what I want to emphasize is just like you need to work out your body to build your muscles, meditation builds our attention and our control of our attention. And that is absolutely crucial. It helps us to see ourselves and the world around us more clearly and with a bit of detachment. Because one of the things that we learn is, like, so many of us deal with chronic pain. Okay. Yeah. So for many years, if I were to use a standard pain, 11-point pain scale measurement on myself, and I did, I actually have kept track of about 80 variables on myself for a couple of decades now, every day. And because I'm a monomaniacal overanalyzer. I study people. That's what I do. Mm-hmm. So for many years there, my pain level was between a 6 and an 8 every day. So that's debilitating. And I'd refused to take opioids because I just didn't want to go there, and I didn't want to open up that possibility in my life, personal decision. So I was popping ibuprofen like candy. I was popping 20 to 24 ibuprofen a day. Okay, that's really bad on your system. But and still I was just beside myself with the pain. So I had to bring meditation back into my life. And I kid you not, so many people are skeptical about this, but the last 2 decades of pain research will back me up on what I'm saying here. And that is The first thing we have to understand about our pain is we need to accept it. And we need to put it in our lives and say, okay, this is what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
And meditation allows us to observe it and develop the detachment from it. So now, day in and day out, I don't take any ibuprofen. I take no pain meds whatsoever. My pain level is there, but I would usually rate myself maybe a 1 to 3 every day. And that is because of meditation, mindset, exercise, those sorts of things. Because it's not about being pain-free. It's about putting the pain in its place so that it doesn't dominate your life. So meditation is one of the crucial tools. The second thing that is really important for mindset for me and that I recommend to many others is oftentimes when we live with a chronic condition, our stress level is up, okay? And we have to understand that there's a lot more going on than stress. Stress can be our friend, and they tell us to avoid stress, but stress actually happens at that edge. And so lots of the really great human experiences that we care for also are involved with stress, but we interpret it as excitement, right? It's physiological arousal. And so when you start getting those feelings of fear, learn to insert a pause before you do anything, because that pause is where you can learn to observe yourself, to find out what's really going on, to make, to get your forebrain, your smarty pants forebrain involved in the process, making a better decision and really understanding what's happening to you and reframing that as challenge, not fear. And that's a really crucial tool that we can use.
Yeah.
And a third, and she wanted 3, so here's the third one. Third one is what I call Plan C. And so behaviors are not just about getting things done. Every time we do something or don't do something, we are teaching ourselves about ourselves. We're teaching other people about us. And we don't want to teach ourselves that we give up. We don't want to teach ourselves that we can't do something. So what we have to do is we have to have whatever task it is. So I'll use like my daily exercise as an example. So I've got plan A, which is here are the weights I want to lift, the exercises I want to do, yada, yada, all that stuff. And that's a pretty intense workout. Well, a lot of days I don't feel like plan A because my condition is, not helping me out. So I have plan B. And plan B is more a typical day. That's what I usually end up doing. But we all know with chronic illness, even plan B is not enough. And there's some days where we're back on the couch and we're doing well just to be awake, right? And so remember what I said, a behavior is not just about getting something done. A behavior is that what you see is the tip of the iceberg. Yeah. And it's doing identity work and it's doing, it's building habits and all that other stuff. So I have plan C. And plan C is the absolute bare, humiliating minimum that I can do and still feel like I'm coming out of the day with a win. So, because doing something, however small, however painful, however humiliating, is a light year difference than doing nothing.
Yeah.
So I will have a version of my workout where maybe it's a 5-pound weight, and I'm going down there, and my balance is not good. So I'll sit down on the weight bench and I'll do just a handful of exercises. And then I will sit for that time period and I will mentally walk myself through the exercise. Why? Because I'm preserving the place in my life for this idea that I am the kind of person that will still do this. I am honoring that commitment.
Yeah, because I want to touch back on the word fear. And that is very broad word to many people. There's two phrases of fear, and we can't stress it enough that every word has a description branded to it. Now, obviously, with fear, you can either have forget everything and run, which many people do that, or the other one, stay, face everything, and rise.
Yeah, I think people call it the fight or flight response, and
Yeah.
there actually is a lot more going on. There is actually freeze, front, flight, fight, fawn, fright, faint, and you can throw a couple others in there. I call it the F it response because they're all F's in there. but we do get a choice, and you're fundamentally correct in that. We either give up and we allow ourselves to fail at the edge, or even if we do fail, we learn from it so that we can go back learning and better prepared the next time. And
Exactly.
it's how we respond, because we can't control. All we can do is the best we can in that moment. And sometimes that will be enough and sometimes it won't be. And we sometimes don't have complete control over what the outcome is going to be. All we can do is do our best. But we do have control over how we respond to it and what we do next.
Well, I have to say, Kevin, you're explaining fear and the tools that we're using there. I mean, you described a typical day of somebody that has chronic illness. Because what you're saying there, when I'm having a real bad day, my diabetes or my mental health, I'm in exactly the same place. I can end up, as you say, laying back on the cushion and basically not doing a lot. But doing something, as you say, is better than nothing. And what I found that keeps me going in those lower times is just to chip away at the basics in life, because it's easy. It's very easy to let yourself go with your personal grooming and everything else and that. And you know what? If I got up and I've had a shower and I've had a shave and I do nothing else for the day, I've beaten that demon. And it's something that is an achievement sometimes, because you just feel like not doing nothing. But I mean, some of the techniques there you're describing, meditation, yes, I do that all the time. But I tell you what, the most underrated is the pause, because it only, as I keep saying on here, only dropped really with me 5 years ago when a penny suddenly dropped, and I realised that I had a choice, and I could choose my reaction to any situation and that. And like we were discussing there before the show, the incident with my cat, where we lost her very suddenly, and I had to get her to a vet, and she had to be euthanized, etc. And that. I mean, I could have been there in blind panic, in paralysis, or whatever, which often is the case in a flight or fear situation. But I just thought, right, the cat, he's definitely got a serious problem here. Straight on the phone the vet, explain what it is, and I dealt with it. Now, had I dealt with that 5 years ago, I wouldn't have taken the pause to reflect, right, what's the situation here? I'd have probably gone head in, or I would have run away, and
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the curious things that we forget is when we freeze up, when we do nothing, in effect, what we're doing is we are giving up our capacity for choice
yeah,
in the
absolutely.
world.
Yeah.
because the choices will still happen. And this is a wonderful lesson from skydiving, because once you go out of that plane, there's no pause, there's no rewind, there's no, oh, this is a little sketchy, I'm not going to do this today. You're committed.
Yeah.
And too often we use our chronic illness as, and I want to be really careful in how I say this here, as an excuse not to do anything,
Yeah.
all the while being cognizant that sometimes it's giving us real reasons not to do something. But we have to become those better observers of ourselves
Yeah.
that we're talking
Mm.
about, and learn to understand when it's a real limitation versus when it's an excuse because we're feeling uncomfortable, we're feeling fearful, we're feeling like it's going to be too much effort,
Yeah.
we're afraid of failing. Those are two different things, but they look the same until we
do.
really start learning how to see them differently.
Yeah.
And when it comes to, for example, skydiving or even just living day-to-day activities, one word comes into mind: insanity. Insanity. Which people that don't know what insanity is, it's practically you repeating everything you're doing, but you're expecting a different result.
Yeah, that's a lovely sentiment, which has been attributed to many over the years, but it is absolutely true. If you are not happy, engaged, functional, satisfied, secure, meaningful in your life, then that means you can either wait for circumstances to change.
Yeah.
Newsflash, they won't. Or you can do something different.
Exactly.
And yeah, you may try something different that doesn't work as well. Okay, now you've learned something and you know not to try that again. So try something else.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because you know if you don't try anything, then nothing's going to change.
Mm.
When you do nothing, you get nothing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I read a good book a while back now, was actually called Leveraging the Universe, and it's all about taking action. If you throw enough balls as you would do in baseball over there, if you keep tossing the ball, you're in the game. And all the while you're tossing balls out there in the universe, things will happen. And sometimes you think it's just a coincidence, but suddenly you've reached out and you realise that the universe is working, and inaction, inertia is the biggest enemy of anyone. And
yeah, inertia is we are definitely inertial creatures, and
yeah,
our system is adapted to I call us resource misers, because we
yep,
want to protect every resource that we have. And one of the things that I wanted to that came to mind as you were saying that was that if we are throwing new things out there and trying, and
yep,
we are always succeeding, then we are not growing,
absolutely.
Exactly.
because failure happens at the edge, and
Yeah.
you've got to
Yeah.
fail sometimes to succeed,
Yeah.
to learn, to grow. And we can be out there on the edge, we can be warriors, but we can't live there. We've got to come back to our home, because we've got to learn to rest and relax and recover and rehabilitate and all of this stuff that allows us to be as strong as we can, and then go out to the edge again.
It's like when you hit rock bottom in a mental health crisis.
Mm-hmm.
I've now learned that when you hit rock bottom, it's fair enough, it feels and looks negative, but in a way it's actually positive as well, because yes, you've stopped, you're pausing, and you feel like a failure, but really, you're just learning. That's your attempting learning.
Yeah.
And if,
And
if you're looking around, the only direction is up, and that's growth.
yeah, you've halted the negative trajectory that you've been on. If
Yes.
you've hit bottom, by definition, you've halted that trajectory. And I've been there.
Yep.
And I didn't know whether I was going to get past it.
Mm.
But that is the opportunity to pause and to look around and to introspect and to try something different. And I would also add, here's another thing, and this is a tough lesson for me to learn, and skydiving really taught this to me. We have to become more humble,
Yep.
because sometimes chronic illness will push us to a place where we feel so diminished that we're embarrassed about where we are at in our
Yep.
lives. And what I want to tell everybody is, if you are way down here with your capacity and you're trying to do something that you normally could do that was way up here, well, now this is overwhelming. It's traumatizing to
Yep.
try to do it. So you have to be humble enough to know that you've got to go all the way back down here and build yourself back up step by step. And when I came back to skydiving, and it took me 47 jumps to do something that should have taken me 25, I had to become humble,
Yep.
because cognitively, I knew what I should be doing. I knew that I couldn't get my body to do it. Okay, that was the reality of it. And so I had to go back to a beginner's mindset. And remember, I'm someone that for the past 20 years, I had always been the expert in the room. I'd always been the professor or the expensive
Mm.
consultant or whoever that was. I'd always been the expert. And I was purposefully doing something that I knew I was going to suck at, and that I was really going to have to work at, and that I was going to fail a lot at,
Yeah.
because I needed humility.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's quite interesting that you explain it that way, Kevin, because often, certainly from a mental health point of view, and I've found in my life when I've been that low, is yes, you've got to go. Back to basics is the way I put it, and
Yeah.
I'm a big sports fan, and with me, I use the mindset of a champion sports person. Perhaps boxer's probably my best example. Someone like Anthony Joshua's just a big loss against Uchek last year. He's going to rebuild himself up, face him again, and he's going to work out what he do. But what does the sportsman do?
Yeah.
They go back to the
Yeah.
basics. They start again, and that is the way that you build up. There's nothing. Your building steps are different, but it's a bit like project management. At the end of the day, you just build it brick by brick by brick. And as I say,
Yeah.
in the beginning, if all you can do is get up, do your personal grooming, and you do nothing more during the day, that is a start in itself.
Well, Simon, I'm glad you mentioned that, because in the book, that's one thing that I actually build on. And I think a lot of people will think this is weird, but you'll immediately get this. Because when we're living with a chronic illness, we are right at the edge. We are at the edge. Well, that means that we're dealing with pain, we're dealing with fatigue, we're dealing
Yep.
with overwhelm, we're dealing with all those things. Well, there are a couple of groups of people who actively choose to do that. And those are elite endurance and extreme athletes. And so I actually drew a lot from the research on the psychology of elite and extreme and endurance athletes, and my own experience becoming an extreme athlete with a chronic condition,
Yep.
in order to develop the tools in this book. Because while they're choosing to face the edge, we're pushed there, and we've got to figure out a way to do it.
Yeah.
And one of those, that is actually a really crucial difference, because we can do a lot when we choose to do it. We can go through a lot of negative stuff when we choose to do it. But with a chronic illness, it's easy for us to feel like we no longer have agency. We've no longer had choice in the matter. And in truth, we don't. We've got this health condition that's imposed on us, and we've got to deal with it somehow.
Yep.
But we've got to find ways to put choice back into our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll totally agree, Kevin. Yeah, very, very. It's very inspiring what you're saying, I have to say. And, you very much so. I was exactly the same with diabetes. I'm struggling like mad with my diabetic control at the moment. But it's not going to beat me. I will get there and I will get it right. But one of the things that has happened over lockdown here in the UK is that the diabetic teams have been under so much pressure because of the pandemic and everything else, and that the usual care that they're providing to us isn't there. And as I say, at the moment, I'm struggling, and I will get there and I will manage it, and I will get a diet that works for me. But, and that I have control over, and I will get control of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, and I think it's also really helpful to not think of it in terms of control, but think of it in terms of influence.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a better word, actually. I like that, influence. Yeah.
Because, well, really, because and again, I'll make this analogy to skydiving. If I go out and I want to control what my experience will be, well, gravity and the winds will win every time.
Yeah.
Those forces are far bigger than I am.
Yeah.
However, if I understand them and I understand myself, I can work with those larger forces, and I can influence my my experience in the direction that I want, a safe landing on target. But if I fight it all the time, well, they're too big. I'm going to lose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, where can people find you?
I've tried to make it really easy for everybody. If you go to yourlifelivedwell.co or justjump.life, that's mapped onto the same place, then you can find my social media, and you can find links to seminars and the book and the podcast, which is very much an educational podcast. It's just about here's a topic, and we do things on mindset, sleep, behavior change, nutrition, movement, all kinds of things like that. So if you go to yourlifelivedwell.co, that's it. On social, Your Life Lived Well is Your LL Well, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm always Dr. KJ Payne everywhere. So, but just go to yourlifelivedwell.co.
There you go. There you go. All right. And all I can say is thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I have had a delightful time, Adam and Simon. And next time I'm back in the UK, I'm going to have to let you know, and I would love to meet you guys.
Yeah, you too.
Brilliant.
I love that.
Yes, so would I. Only trouble is, he's up the north and I'm down the south, but we'll find a way.
Oh, nice. That's a great excuse.
We'll meet in the middle. We'll meet in the middle.
London.
Hey, I've been all over. I lived there during college, and I try to get back every few years, and so it's one of my favorite places.
Wow, brilliant.
Wow.
Right. Thanks to all the people that's interacted, whether you're now or on the replay. Again, please subscribe to our YouTube channel in awareness, and on Facebook, follow us on Mental Health Warriors. Join our group, the Mental Health Warriors private group. I know Kevin will. And any last words, guys?
No, I'd just like to thank Kevin for coming on and telling his story, because I found it, I have to say, I found it very inspiring, and I don't know where the last hour's gone. I was so engrossed. Thank you very much.
Well, I've greatly enjoyed it. I just want to remind everyone, take a pause in your life and be kinder to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got one last thing, Adam, before we forget it entirely, is the premiere of my show tomorrow as the Workplace Warrior, called Man Cave Moments, which will be airing at 11 p.m. UK time.
11 a.m.
AM, yes, sorry, AM, not PM. I'll be in bed and asleep by then. And yeah, my special guest will actually be the mental health warrior himself, Mr. Adam Duval. I look forward to it.
God help me. No, I'm looking forward to it.
Gentlemen.
I'm looking forward to it. Right, and yeah, and all I'll do is sign off with the sign-off video, and we'll see you tomorrow. Please share this in awareness.
Be well, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.